Hello YouTube, I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney. On this channel, we answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney. We have a rather weighty question from YouTube user Dakota Denali. It was quite large, so I'm going to answer one portion of the question, not the entirety of the question, but Dakota Denali, that is the sickest username I've seen in weeks or months. Question, read into the record. How do employment law firms generally assess difficulties surrounding sexual assault plaintiffs with pre-existing mental health conditions and a past history of sexual violence? For instance, there are some attorneys less willing to accept cases where a potential client has past histories of mental illness or surviving sexual violence. Thank you for your consideration, your content. Well, you are welcome for my content. I hope it's useful in some way. Okay. Let's break this down a little bit. So first and foremost, there's some things in your question that I didn't read. The other parts of your question that make me think this might not be workplace related. My answers are purely workplace related. I don't know about anything else. I'm not working in the field of anything else. Like any answer I give you in terms of sexual assault will be pertaining to a sexual assault that takes place in the workplace. Let's get that out of the way. Now, I have other videos on the channel about mental health and representing people who are facing mental health challenges, who are dealing with mental health diagnoses. And I will try to recap those very, very quickly for this, but I do suggest you go check out those videos. The more serious a mental health diagnosis or a mental health challenge is for a given plaintiff, the more risk that adds to their case. That's a fact. You can say whatever you want. No, Vince, you're a bigot. Okay, doesn't matter. That's the reality. Now, counterpoint, it is our duty to help people with disability discrimination and also to help people with workplace sexual assault, even if there are added risks from a mental health diagnosis. Now, I say that, and that's easy for me to say because our firm is, I guess I'll say it's sitting pretty, right? My tolerance for risk can be a little bit higher because life is good, right? Other firms would come back and say, Vince, you're contending that I should represent this person when I know that I can only represent, let's say, we'll think of a solo. Maybe a solo can represent 20 to 40 plaintiffs a year, right? And that solo could be sending somewhere between 10 and 100,000 invested in a given case. Just depending on where the case goes, how the case goes, everything else. So that solo, they've got a certain amount of bankroll to bankroll their cases. They have a certain number of cases they can handle per year because just the realities of labor, there's only one attorney in that firm. And so when they look at cases to choose who they're going to represent, that solo might say, well, the more serious mental health diagnoses, plaintiff, has a much higher chance that the case will not recover for a variety of reasons. Americans are kind of bigoted towards mental health issues, so they might not find the witnesses credible. Often very serious mental health diagnoses can lead people to abandon their case in the middle of their case. It can lead them to do strange things like breach agreements and not collect their money, or there's a million and one things that can happen, or just say aggressive things or wild things that discredit them in the eyes of the public and the jury and this and that, right? Or they could have a tough day on the stand and behave in a fashion that makes the jury or the judge or the arbitrator, whoever it is, feel that they perhaps would not be believable or be able to do their job, whatever it is, right? So all of those things are things that solo plaintiff's attorney might say to me. Easy for you to say, Vince, I can't just throw away 10,000 to 100 grand on a case that I think has higher risk. Point taken. I disagree, but point taken. I would say that one, it's our duty. Two, if you're working with experienced mental health professionals, if you're treating your client's well-being as a resource that is renewable and should be carefully tended to, if you are putting in the time and the effort to make your client feel like she or he has a team fighting for them, that they are in the fight, they're not a victim. These are all things you can do to mitigate serious mental health issues in a case. Certainly. Now, even taking that stance, I want to be clear, I'm imperfect. I often don't work with people with very, very serious substance abuse disabilities. Not because I don't believe they have claims. I do. But in my familial history, my mother had a very serious substance abuse problem. She was also dealing with a schizophrenia diagnosis, and many, many, many members of my family were dealing with bipolar condition, right, of different levels of seriousness. And I really went two different ways in how I reacted to different conditions, right? With the substance abuse issues, I often find myself to perhaps not be the best, most ideal attorney to represent people with a very, very serious substance abuse problem. I often send them to other attorneys, or I would just let them know, like, hey, if you're going to work with our firm, it's not going to be with me. I don't think I'm the best person for you, and I need you to have the best representation possible for you, for your claims, and so we should do this. They can make an informed decision. That's my own issues, my own conscious and unconscious prejudices, right? It's a failing that I readily admit to. On the other hand of things, I think I am perhaps one of the best suited attorneys to work with people dealing with schizophrenia and bipolar condition from a lifetime of practice, right? I can remember being a very young child, and my family did not have the diagnoses that they later came to. And I can remember just thinking to myself, like sitting on the stairs, thinking to myself, like, I don't think these people are like me. Like, I think there's something wrong with me. I don't understand why everybody's screaming about French fries, but I know that I don't feel the things these people feel. And my conclusion at that time was not that there was something wrong with my family or the world. My conclusion was, I probably lack some human emotions, and I should figure out some strategies for how to interact better with the people who feel the things I don't feel, right? I was a kid. It wasn't that complex, but like the long and short of it was I was like, yeah, there's probably something wrong with me and I should try to fix it, right? And that, as an adult, led to a number of strategies to deal and interact with my family in a loving, caring manner, even when they're going through a particularly challenging part of their cycle, right? So many of those strategies are also useful to my clients, I think. And I can certainly see other attorneys do things in situations where I'm like, oh no, can't do that. Nope, that's not an option. You can't do that if you care about this person and this claim. That's not going to work, right? And I'm not really talking about my firm, but I see other firms, and I'm like, no. That's not what we do. We call a mental health professional, and we work together to get our client over the finish line, to help our client in the limited, narrow capacity that an employment attorney can. We do not act as therapists. We do not act as spirit guide or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, that's not our job. We're generally not equipped for that. But there are people who are, because they work in that specific industry where they help people with mental health challenges, right? So that's the kind of the discussion of mental health and folks with mental health challenges. And I listen, mental health is a spectrum, right? Like, there's different levels of mental health challenge in the U.S. right now. I think almost everyone, if they went to a mental health professional, would have a diagnosis of some kind. Like, I'm not too confident that there's people walking around today who, if they went and got diagnosed by a mental health professional, would just be like, oh, you're perfect mentally. I don't know if that's how mental health works in 2023. But I'd be skeptical. Like I suspect no one's just right. I mean, that was a weird voice, but there's varying degrees, right? And we're talking about, I think here, Dakota Denali, I think at least I'm talking about very serious mental health challenges. So now, in terms of sexual violence in the workplace, there's two considerations, and they both kind of assume that you've already. Let me take a step back. American juries are very skeptical and biased against mental health conditions, right? If you want to do a trial for a plaintiff who is dealing with schizophrenia, the average U.S. juror will think that person doesn't even know if she or he is lying. Not accurate. But it's your job to educate them, right? So that's going to be a tall order. You're going to be getting a lot of expert witnesses to do a lot of knowledge backfilling to get that jury to a point where they can hear your client for what she or he is actually saying and say, oh, I believe that person could be telling the truth. Like, that's going to take a lot of time and effort. And it will not be easy because you're going to have defense attorneys running full court defense trying to obstruct you at every step of the way. It's a lot. It's like trying to combine a sandcastle and a Rector set. Like, it's with someone running around trying to kick it over. Like, it can be done, but it's quite the endeavor. So that's the first part. The second part is the damage landscape can be quite complex in a case of sexual assault in the workplace where someone is dealing with serious mental health issues. So often these trials are bifurcated, right? You have a trial to see if you win or lose your case. Did the things you're saying happen? Are they claims? Can you win? Oh, you won. Okay, wonderful. We now have a second hearing to determine damages. There's two factors. You mentioned prior sexual violence here. There's also the mental health issue. Both of these tie into something which is kind of an offensive phrase. But the phrase is the eggshell plaintiff. And without really explaining that idea in its entirety, what we're kind of saying here is certain plaintiffs, when bad things happen to them, are impacted more seriously than other plaintiffs, right? If I experienced a forcible touching against my will, it probably wouldn't harm me emotionally as much as others because I have not experienced that before. And I have a lot of privilege, and so I have a lot of bodily autonomy and agency and all these things that it just probably wouldn't harm me quite the same, right? I'm not saying it wouldn't harm me. I'm just saying it might not be the same as someone who is a repeat victim of sexual violence, right? I don't know that. I'm guessing, not a mental health professional. So the person who comes in with prior sexual violence and then experiences sexual violence in the workplace, you can make the argument they could be harmed more. You can also make the argument, depending upon their diagnosis, that could also lead to greater emotional damages from the events of the given case, right? Defense counsel will make a counterpoint argument, which is, hey, you've clearly been harmed. You went through some stuff, and there's some damages. You won the trial, so now we're doing damages. We're not saying there's no damages because we lost the trial, but we are saying that a lot of the emotional trauma you're dealing with came from your prior sexual violence, not the stuff that happened at the hands of my client in the workplace. That feels like a really shitty argument. Congratulations, you're not a monster. But it is also a very common argument, and it's one that defense counsel will have to make at the time of damages, right? If you have a bifurcated damages hearing. And it is an argument that carries weight. It's a real argument. Like, that will be thought about endlessly. So there's a lot going on there as well. The landscape of damages and the fight over damages is far more complex than it might have otherwise been. Now, it could work in your favor, could work against you. I don't know the situation or the hypothetical that you're thinking about, so I can't really apply the facts, but it's a serious consideration. So I guess to try to wrap things up here, employment attorneys are imperfect in a fascinating variety of ways. And while I would argue that I think we have a duty to help people who have been wronged in the workplace, even when they're dealing with serious mental health diagnoses and challenges, many attorneys will not agree. They're not going to come out and say it. They're just not going to take the case for financial reasons or quality of life reasons or their own prejudices. I don't know. Prejudices? I should probably know how to pluralize that word. So that's the reality. I can tell you I have no recollection of ever shying away from a plaintiff because she or he had experienced repeat sexual violence. That to me actually makes a lot of sense based on my layperson's understanding of how human beings react to trauma and sexual violence. Like, it would not surprise me at all that someone would be targeted repeatedly based on the reading I have done. But again, layperson, and I would prefer to be guided by experts on this. So that's never been an issue for me, and it's not something I would shy away from. And really, mental health diagnoses, I think we should bring those cases. I think we have a duty to bring those cases. And that's easy for me to say because our firm is doing well, life is swell, and I can embrace a little bit more risk than the solo that we described earlier in our hypothetical. So, Dakota Denali, this may have been a more involved answer with more personal disclosures than you were looking for. But try to be honest in this channel, and I did my best. I hope it was helpful. If it was, like, subscribe, comment down below. If it wasn't, tell me how I failed you. I will try to make you a follow-up video. I will check the comments on this video. Remember, everybody works. Not everybody wins. Be smart out there.